Okay, so introduction to anatomy, levels of organization of the body. So the levels of organization of the body are atoms, molecules, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, and finally the organism. Each level of organization is built from the preceding levels. You may have learned this in basic biology. And here's a nice picture from Martini's. They're starting at atoms, they're going to molecules, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, and finally an organism, which isn't shown, but you can imagine a little human here. Okay, so atoms. There are amazingly few kinds of atoms in the human body in any considerable number, and those four types are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. All of the other kinds of atoms in our body are there in only tiny percents. And here are some that are actually more common. This list goes on a bit, but you see here, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, sulfur, chlorine, magnesium, iron, iodine, and trace elements, which aren't even shown in this picture, are all present much less commonly. So it's pretty amazing. We are hydrogen and oxygen, 88% of us. Wow. And yet we're so complex. So organic molecules. Organic molecules are most commonly present in these four different classes. They are proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. These are organic molecules because they all contain carbon, right? So proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, nucleic acids. And now this picture is different than the last little picture, right? Even though they look really similar, this one was showing atoms, hydrogen, oxygen, and this one is showing the four classes. But most of this pie chart is actually taken up by water, which would be a lot of the hydrogen and the oxygen, of course. And we have to look at this smaller part of the pie chart, what would that be, 34%, to see our four molecule classes, the proteins 20%, the lipids 10%, carbohydrates 3%, and other, they don't even have nucleic acids on here. They're just saying other. So nucleic acids would fit into this little sliver over here. And here's a picture in case you were wondering about proteins. And here's a picture of what a protein might look like using a ribbon model of the structure of a protein. And then lipids. Lipids are commonly in cell membranes. So here they have a lipid bilayer to remind you that lipids are in cell membranes. And then carbohydrates and nucleic acids, which of course have a spiral double helix structure, okay, as we learned in biology. So then moving on to cells, cells are the smallest unit of life. They contain many organelles. And here are all of the organelles that you need for anatomy class, but I would like you to remind yourself of them because you do need to be fluent in understanding what they are for anatomy class, even though we don't review them. So, of course, mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. They make ATP, and it's thought that mitochondria are engulfed smaller cells and that may have happened 2 billion years ago. The nucleus contains chromosomes. The endoplasmic reticulum processes proteins and makes lipid. The cytoplasm is a gelatinous fluid inside the cell. That's not really an organelle, it's the cytoplasm. And then moving on up to the left side, microvilli are protrusions of the cell membrane that increase the surface area for diffusion and absorption. And this will come up, for example, in digestive system. Then here we have ribosomes, and ribosomes are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum as these little balls here. And there are also free ribosomes in the cytoplasm. And of course, ribosomes translate mRNA into proteins, and they themselves are protein RNA structures. And then shown here is the cell membrane, the phospholipid bilayer, which is semi-permeable. So what organelles do you have to learn? Well, we have, of course, the cell membrane and the cytoplasm, and then microvilli, which are protrusions of the cell membrane. then the nucleus, which contains chromosomes, which is a large structure inside, usually the center of the cell, but sometimes in another spot. And then mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, and ribosomes. So not that much stuff for the cells. All right, some questions. So now let's move on to, so far we've gotten through atoms, molecules, cell. So let's move on to tissues. So tissues are groups of cells that work together to perform one or more functions. And there are four primary tissue types. We will really be focused on learning the primary tissue types in multiple lectures. So first we learn about connective tissue, then about epithelial tissue, then about muscle tissue, and then about nervous tissue. Next, organs. They are groups of tissues that work together to perform one or more functions. And for example, down here we have the heart to the far right, and the heart is an organ, and in it, groups of tissues work together to perform one or more functions, the function of the heart being to pump blood. As part of the heart, there is epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue, all part of constructing the heart. We may mostly think of the heart as a muscle, but it also needs to have its own blood supply with a type of epithelial tissue lining the blood vessels that feed it. There is a connective tissue framework for the heart, and then there is nervous tissue that is controlling how the heart beats. Right? Organ systems are groups of organs that work together to perform one or more functions. For example, the cardiovascular system includes the heart, blood vessels, and blood. And we will learn about each of these 11 organ systems in depth throughout this course. We will learn what makes them up, what they do. So we've gotten to the end of the levels of organization. So next, positions of the body.